My name is Christine Curry, and I'm the Iowa Outreach Coordinator of the Izaak Walton League's Upper Mississippi River Initiative, known as UMRI. And I'd like to welcome everybody to our 2023 series on soil and water conservation, Thinking Like a Watershed program. The monthly presentations are jointly hosted with our Izaak Walton League's Upper Mississippi River Initiative, and co-hosts include Panora Conservation Chapter member Chris Henning and Des Moines Chapter Communications Director Bud Hartley. We're so happy that you're able to join us this evening for Crops and Livestock, a match made in heaven, with Denise Schwab, Extension Beef Specialist from Iowa State University, and Caroline Van Schaik, our Driftless Coordinator from the Upper Mississippi River Initiative, Izaak Walton League. How reintegrating livestock and cropping systems is a marriage for soil health, climate change, and happy farmers. No blind date needed. Forthright talk about cropland and livestock and the matchmaking that would put soil and farmers alike in a healthier state have culminated in just released survey to understand why this marriage is so hard to sell. We know some of the benefits to public waters, habitat, rural economy, roads, wildlife, and a pool of resilience against weather, climate, and global everything. But what are the challenges? Iowa Extension Beef Specialist Denise Schwab and UMRI's Caroline Van Schaik shed light on the 6-state Match Made in Heaven project, its unusual bedfellows, the challenging conversations that shaped the survey, and 10,000 responses they hope to get from the survey that generates. Both are active members of the project's advisory group and farm in Northeast Iowa, Southeast Minnesota, respectively. Let me just go ahead. And Caroline, if you want to share your screen, that'd be great. For those of you who are just joining, please put your name and where you're from in the chat box and any affiliations. And we will get started, and we'll have time to have some Q&A after the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, so thanks for the chance to share about this project. It's been a fun project to get initiated. We're just in the about the first year or so of the project, but we'll share a little bit of what we have going on here. And Carolyn and I will kind of switch back and forth in terms of the presentation. So this is a project that is funded by SARE, which I'm sure most of you know SARE. Looking at the names that I saw on the list, a few I recognize. You understand what SARE is. Greenlands Blue Waters, I see Aaron was on as well. So it's a nonprofit that's really focused on how do we get continuous living cover out on the ground, get more ground covered with more forages, and to help protect the environment as we're moving forward. I don't think we need to say a whole lot about the wonderful match that livestock and crop enterprises are. I think we all have a pretty good understanding that the two working together to do a great job to protect the environment, to build our local economies, very economical and environmentally friendly on all accounts. Just a little bit of what we're trying to, as we talk about integrating, for a long time, we know that livestock and crop work well together, but we're trying to look at how do we intentionally add more livestock back into the environment. Doesn't have to be an ownership of the livestock. It can be a contract agreement, but again, trying to get more livestock out on the ground. That includes grazing cover crops, grazing pasture grounds, grazing annual forages, and then of course our ultimate is perennial forages. So trying to look at that together. So if you want to advance it, Caroline. Oh, Robert, and goals. So our goals really are to look at how do we overcome some of the barriers, because we know there are barriers out there. Why some of our crop farmers have not have gotten out of the livestock industry and have not got back into it. So a lot of our effort is to look at how do we identify those barriers as a multiple group of organizations. How do we work to overcome them? So our objectives then are, we have four different objectives. So you can advance the slide, Carolyn, that looks at kind of the resources that are out there already in terms of integration of livestock and crops. So what's already available, trying to really build that partnership. So looking at not only the livestock organizations and the environmental organizations, but also bringing in our cropping organizations to partner to help build this project further. Building some of those bridges between strictly crop farmers and livestock farmers. And so we'll talk a little bit about a couple of things we have going there. And then also to build relationships with our disadvantaged enterprises as well. So a little bit on who's all involved with this. It is, as I said, a part of Greenland's Blue Water. So you see Erin there. She's our lead for that whole Greenland Blue Waters, looking at that upper Mississippi River area and how do we get more forages on the ground, more perennial cover on the ground. Jane Jewett is our project co-leader along with Laura Payne on this specific project. And working on that. And then Amy Fenn is our project coordinator who basically is our boots on the ground to help implement everything as we go forward on this. Go ahead and advance. It is a 6-state project. So it is Iowa, Illinois, I always put Iowa first, sorry. Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Minnesota, Missouri, and Wisconsin are all involved in it. As you can see, we all drain into that Mississippi River. And because of all the issues related to the hypoxia zone, that's driven a lot of what we're trying to do here. I kind of like this graphic that we have here. It looks at what is the major plant grown in the different areas. So the yellow is very heavy corn, bean, grain production, could be small grains as well. The greens are more the forested areas or woodland areas, which of course would be in the far upper northern part of our region. You get down into the southern, we get a lot more grass areas, a lot more pasture ground. But you can see on all of that, we could sure incorporate a lot more pasture ground into some of those areas that are very heavy corn and bean production, or at least in our area, corn and bean production. So Carolyn's going to talk a little more about the project in terms of more specifics.
Yes, hi everybody. Okay, how are we doing on the technology front, Christine?
You're okay, Caroline. You're kind of a little bit delayed, but I think we'll be okay.
Okay, all right. So this grant that Denise has just laid out has how Amy Fenn has characterized it as 6 buckets of work for deliverables for you guys who are very grant oriented. And we're going to go very briefly through all 6 of them, and I'm just going to march right on here. So what she calls the first bucket is the working advisory group. That is actually how Denise and I got more involved together. This grant was designed very explicitly to, as we say, build relationships with groups that don't always get to work together. So Denise referenced the Crop Association folks and the Livestock Association folks, and they do not always work together. And similarly, the crop folks don't always work tightly with the conservation folks and vice versa. So we have strived really hard to start that bridge building right here in our own house. And so I want to give you a couple of really fascinating numbers. This comes from our last advisory group meeting of about a month ago. We now have 65 groups across those 6 states that are working with us, and about half of them have attended at least 3 of our working meetings. We have 11 farmer advisors across our states. Crop associations are represented by 5 different groups. We have 6 livestock associations working with us, about 14 university, state, federal organization type folks. We have 11 state level organizations and 4 regional organizations as well. So we are genuinely trying to practice bridge building right here in our own house. Our second deliverable is what we call an infographic. If you're my age or older, you might just call it a poster, but I have come over the years to learn that it is a process of getting to that end result as well as the end result itself. We have used the design of this infographic to do two things. One is it has gotten us talking as an advisory group. Many of us have worked with many others in the group, but nobody has worked with everybody. And so we can now say that we have all worked together. We wanted to show the idea of reintegration or integration of cropping systems and livestock systems. And so we brainstormed together on what those benefits are, what are the challenges, how did we want to illustrate these benefits, what kind of photographs did we want to use, what would the order of the photographs be used. And I do want to give a shout out to the company that helped us progress from brainstorming online stickies and verbal stickies to the draft layout in the middle to the final product, which I'm going to get to you right now, which it is what's in front of you. It's a really, I think it's a really wonderful illustration of what we think is possible, as Denise says, to change some of that yellow corn and grain ground into maybe corn ground, but corn and something else that has something to do with livestock and forages and permanent roots and more cover on our soil. So we, we can wax poetic about the benefits, but we are not unaware of the challenges of doing that. That marriage is difficult to sell, which is why we were able to even write a grant to talk about it. So we've put challenges as a constant cycle of evaluation and reevaluation. It's no small peanuts to do this. And then I want to draw your attention. You can take this document, put your name and your email or your website in that lower right corner and use it yourself. It's free on the website. We want it out. Our discussions to get to this product ranged from how to illustrate the rooting structure, the difference in the rooting structure, where to put the livestock, where to put grazing crops versus a permanent pasture. A stream was not in the original plan, and we realized as a group that we needed a stream and where to put it. What was the role of a tractor? So it's a very good document. Besides the exercise of actually producing it, we also now are using it as a way of promoting the survey, which is really what Denise and I are here to talk about. I want to use one more, just show you one more example of an infographic to help you understand that our Midwest Perennial Forage Working Group did not come about because of this grant. We have been at work for 10 or 12 years promoting, as Denise said, permanent cover, more cover, better roots in the ground, and all the soil and environmental and potentially economic benefits that come from that. And I'm showing you this infographic. We used it in the same way. We brainstormed together. We thought about what our message was. We haggled over whether the roots on the permanent vegetation were deep enough. We decided that we needed to illustrate the water retention capacity of deep roots and thus the little blue dots. This also is up for grabs. And this was designed for municipalities because we could talk about soil health with the farming community, but in fact, some of the economic cost of bare soil is borne by our counties and towns and townships. And so this went out to that community as a way of advocating for them to not just invest in rebuilding culverts and roads and blown out bridges, but also potentially to think about investing in their farmers and looking at cover crops and incentives through their municipal budgets. The survey, we're going to come back to that in just a moment. Our fourth deliverable is, Denise, is your thing. I'm going to shut up. Okay, Denise, take it away.
So our fourth deliverable is farmer case studies. And our goal is to have one case study for each state and really trying to identify a producer, a farmer who has done an outstanding job over a period of time, integrating crops and livestock into his or her enterprise, his or her operation. We've kind of got some templates that we're using to look at and trying to get some ideas on what are their budgets, what's their cost of production, how do they credit the cropping enterprise for the cattle being able to graze and vice versa. So how do they share the cost between the different enterprises? And then some questions we have on it. And our hope is that we'll come out with a good study or a good story about each of these different producers, one from each state. So I would say, and then follow that up too with a field day. So our hope is in 2024, so next year, that we would have a field day on each of those producers' farms to kind of release the results, share what we've learned through the survey, et cetera. I would put a plug in. We've got 2 of the states done, but we're still looking for a producer in Indiana to be that case study. So if anybody knows a good operator in Indiana that might make for a nice case study, by all means, we are looking for somebody. Let Carolyn or I know, and we'll be glad to pass that word along. As I mentioned, in 2024, our 3rd year of the project, we hope to do a field day at least the case study farms and maybe some more along that line. But trying to look at how do we share the results of this project? How do we share what these successful producers have done as they intentionally look at integrating livestock and cropping enterprises together? We also are looking at partners to help promote that, be a part of it, of those different field days. We have a note on here that funding's available for organizations that are willing to help us get the message out, be a part of this. There is some funding available through the grant to help cover some of those costs. So if you're a part of an organization that's not already involved but interested in it, again, reach out to any of us to learn more about what you can do. I said I'd mention a little bit about the resource library that we have, or that's kind of our 6th bucket, is to look at building and developing a resource library. So we're still in the process of that. That's kind of in that last year of the project plans. But one resource that is already available and can be used and is being used is the Midwest Grazing Exchange. And it's a combination of multiple states in the upper Midwest, basically trying to be the matchmaker is how I think of it. So if I have livestock and I'm running short on feed, I need to find a place to send them. I can go into the Midwest Grazing Exchange and see those farmers who have, maybe it's corn stock ground to graze, maybe it's permanent pasture that's available. Maybe they put out a winter cover crop that's available for spring grazing early. I can find a partner through this system to allow us to work together on it, and vice versa. As a crop producer, if I could sit out and say, I know that in my case, Northwest Iowa has really been in a severe drought. They're short on forages. I've got acres and acres of corn stalk fields sitting here in the fall ready to be grazed. I actually have fences. That's a plus. I can post in there and say, I have corn stalk that I gladly let a cattle producer come graze for a fee, obviously, but be able to make those partnerships. It's an advantage to me as a crop farmer to get some of that stubble, some of that residue off, not all of it, but some of it, because we've been in a no-till situation for years. So it's a great opportunity to kind of play that matchmaker and link producers with livestock and producers with feed resources together. Carolyn.
All right, good. So we're going to go back to the survey. I want to say one quick thing here, if I can say anything really quick. I spent quite a few moments there talking about that infographic. And the reason I did is I wanted to give you a sense of how much we as an advisory group have had to work already together to bridge language. I mean, I even listened to Denise and the kind of language you use, Denise, versus the language I use. And
Mhm.
we are speaking about the same things, but we use different language. And we knew that as a group that if we were going to write the instrument that is a survey, we were going to have to find the language that appealed to the people we were trying to get to do this survey. So that infographic helped us to do that, among many other things that it helped us to do. So the survey is a result in part of the amount of conversation that we spent on the infographic that we then were able to carry on and in a much deeper level with this survey. So it is a tool. Anybody who's written and done a survey knows that it's a tool. We wanted as a group to get past the anecdotes and to try to quantify what we are not seeing out there. We're seeing all that yellow on the map. We're not seeing as much livestock as we want to see. If we're not seeing livestock, we're not seeing those perennial roots in the ground. We're not seeing cover. What we are seeing is a lot of bare ground too many months of the year. So we wanted a survey that would go out to all the crop and livestock farmers and landowners across those 6 states, but I will shamelessly say that we're happy to have you take the survey yourself if you are a farmer anywhere in the country. And when we get to analyzing it, if we need to boot out your zip code for certain analyses, we will do that. We'd happily have your input. As Denise has said, we are trying to understand what producers' experiences are, what their interests are in livestock and cropping systems together, what's holding them back from doing more business with the other end of the crop and livestock spectrum. And of course, at the end of the day, the data that we collect, we hope, we plan to inform how we talk about this in our information sheets, in our curricula, in programming. For those of us who are doing policy work, how does current policy play into this idea of integration, and how does it not? How can it be changed? So it should be very clear to you by now that this survey was written exceedingly collaboratively by all of us on the advisory group. It should be very clear to you that some of us were noisier in the process than others. It was a really fun process. That survey is in circulation now, and it will be for this entire year and maybe even a month or so into 24, but certainly in 2023. 2024 will have the analysis completed, we hope. And I should give a shout out to the University of Wisconsin Survey Center for being infinitely patient with us. They made some suggestions that many of them we accepted, and I know that some of them we pushed back on. And so there are some questions in this survey that I'm sure they're cringing at and that most of us are utterly delighted with. I wanted to include a sense of some of the questions. So, and you probably can't read this, but for example, number 24 is aimed at producers who have both crops and livestock, who are working with both species of plant and animal in some capacity. And we ask, for example, what is hard about that? What's challenging? And our answer ranges go everything from not at all the way to extremely challenging. And we ask about finding land and putting in equipment, and is soil compaction a problem? Is weeds, are those an issue? Question 35 is aimed at participants who have never had livestock, and we ask why not? Were livestock not on the farm when you took it over? Do you not have experience with it? Did it prove not to be profitable? Did you have trouble with labor? Why not? 38 and 42, those are aimed at participants who do not have livestock, but we're asking you to consider it. And so if you can suspend reality for the moment and just consider adding livestock, where are the challenges? Is fencing and watering, like Denise mentioned, are those the challenges? Is housing a problem? Is learning how to manage grazing a problem? Are weeds and soil compaction, are those issues for you? And then question 44 is another example is, if we've gotten you so far, if you would consider livestock, what would be those conditions? Do you want to own them yourself and manage them outrightly? Do you want someone else to own them and manage them outrightly, but on your land? Do you want to see them year round? Do you want to see them only seasonally? These were very careful, the result of really careful, blunt, expanding conversations. The issue of owning livestock versus borrowing them, we talked about, not in these questions, but in others. We realized that we had to have an answer spectrum that ranged from fall tillage all the way to untilled perennials. It couldn't be one or the other. It had to be everything. Denise, we were talking about economic pressures before we came on today, and we had to put in economic pressures on conservation practices within the body of our questions. They're reflected. We also heard and decided and yelled in no uncertain terms that this has to be cell phone friendly. It was not when we thought we were done, and it needs to be shorter. So I think I just jumped, hang on here. This is what happens when you talk a little bit with your hands. So we want 10,000 responses, and that's a lot of promotion. And so I want to talk for a little bit about how we're making this happen right now. Amy Fenn, who Denise introduced as our project coordinator, she's put together what she calls a toolkit online of promotional materials, and we're going to go over it in a moment. And then the other part is us, all of our partners who bring boots to the ground in the way of newsletters and membership and chapters. We're all using bits and bobs from Amy's toolkit to get the survey out and back to us. And Denise and I are shameless in asking in no uncertain terms that we would we encourage you to consider coming in and helping us get the word out about this survey, because we cannot get 10,000 responses if we don't send out many, many, many more surveys than that. So this is what the online toolkit has to offer. There are press releases, there are email message templates, there are PDF and JPEG postcards, lots of social media blurbs, versions of these slides. There's a printable version of the survey. And as Denise mentioned, and I'm going to reiterate, the grant has some limited funds to help you with some of these costs. You can find all of that at this website, which is really long and it makes a lot of sense. And you can also just search Match Made in Heaven survey and you will get to this toolkit. Here's an example of one of the postcards that Amy designed, and I'll give you an example of how I've used it. So I work for the Izaak Walton League in Minnesota, and one of our Izaak Walton League members donated $70 for me to print 500 of these cards in color. And I've taken them to a couple of conferences already this winter, and I don't go anywhere without making sure that if I'm in the company of a farmer or a landowner that they don't get one of these postcards put in their face. You will note that there is a very beautiful QR code in your lower right corner, and I suggest and encourage you to go ahead. You can point at it. It works. I'll give you a moment to think about that, and then I'm going to go to this can be either the back side of that that previous postcard, or it can be a standalone on by itself.
And I'd add,
our part. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, I add to that. I've taken these cards and made them into a slide that as at the start of the meetings, it can just be scrolling and put it up there for, I don't know, 20 seconds or something, and then go on to another one that talks about upcoming events, but another way to constantly get that message out.
Super duper. It's really, really a good idea. Here's some other ideas. Flyers, inserts into programs, on display tables, newsletter blurbs. M- My Ike's program, the Upper Mississippi River Initiative, we have a website, and I don't think that a month has gone by that I haven't put something about this project, and more recently about the survey on it. That's another contribution that you could make as joining us in our partners. Lots of media campaign opportunities. We're going to have to cast a wide and creative net to get these responses, lots of mix and match, meaning if you send an email blurb out now, would you consider popping it into a newsletter in a month from now and putting it on your website and doing a social media campaign, we'll say in September, and having some of those postcards out on a display table all summer long, whatever it takes. We would really seriously welcome your input. I think there is Amy Fenn's email and our link again. And I think this is how you can find Denise and myself as well. I'm thanking you on behalf of Denise and myself for listening, and I'm going to thank you even more if you can step up and help get this out. And I think, Denise, we managed to get that in 28 minutes. And so if there are questions or comments, we're welcome to take them. And I'm going to see if I can get out of here and do that.
Oh, fantastic.
Okay, here we
That's
go.
great.
All right, good.
Thank you, Caroline, and thank you, Denise. We do have a question from Lonnie. How do you talk about the increased methane that comes with increased cattle herds? Big issue anymore.
Well, I'll stab at part of this, and I am by far not a methane expert. I'm a beef specialist, but actually, if you look at the big picture of U.S. agriculture, we are actually working on the smallest cow herd we've had since 1962. So the number of cows that we have currently is at an all-time low. But the other thing that's also going on is we are becoming much, much more efficient at producing food, more food from fewer animals, which in the big scheme of things reduces the total quantity of methane output. Now, you have to remember, though, methane comes from the digestion of forage and fiber. So as we're trying to promote more perennial forage cover, more livestock to support that and utilize that forage cover, you can't help it. Methane's going to come out the front end. And remember, it comes out the front end, not the back end. But that's just going to happen because they're digesting that fiber. Fiber is a product that we as humans cannot consume. So cattle are a way that we can utilize a forage resource, not human edible, to help produce a high quality protein for human food consumption. But we're producing more beef with fewer animals, which is helping to reduce the big picture methane digestion.
Thank you so much, Denise. Don't know if anybody has any other questions. Do we have any other questions this evening? You can put them in the chat box or just raise your hand and unmute.
So I have a question.
Bianca.
Hi, I'm
Hi.
Bianca from University of Minnesota. I'm a PhD student with dairy cattle. So my question is, where can we find like those nice infographics that you showed us? Is it on the Greenland's Blue Waters website or where?
Yeah, Bianca, if you go to Greenland's Blue Waters, I can't remember exactly the path. Aaron, if you're still on, you can unmute and answer it. You're looking for the continuous living cover tab along the top. And okay, Aaron, I'm running out of information. Are you there and can you help us there? It is
I
on
say,
Greenland's
Caroline,
Blue.
It's in the next to the last slide. If you go back to your sharing your slides, it's on the next to the last one is the
Okay.
website.
Yeah, and I'm listening intently but can't speak well. I have to say, yeah, if you go to greenlandsforwaters.org, along the top there's making CLC happen. There's a drop down and you'll find the matchmaking site or page. And from there you get the infographics, the toolkit they spoke about. Can you hear me?
And we can put it in the, I will be sending out a link to this program. So we'll put it in there as well. We'll put in any, you know, links that are associated with this presentation.
So,
Thank
so
you.
there is the link. The easiest might be just to do a Google search for Greenland Blue Water Match Made in Heaven. And this will probably be the first thing that pops up.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Bianca. And if you get stuck at all, just shout and we'll get you the direct links. I do want to say something that Erin reminds me about. Okay, I bet I can stop this now. That Erin reminds me about it, and that is that a few of us have taken the survey just to trial run it. I took it as a farmer, and it took me about 25 minutes, but I'm one of those people who actually fills in the short answer parts, and I was also looking at it from a survey writer, not just a survey taker point of view. So, you know, we'll say about 20 minutes.
I have
One
another
of the-
question. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Bianca.
No, just like, do you have partners at the University of Minnesota?
Well, the Greenland's Blue Waters is a consortium. I think that's a fair word to say, Erin. I hope that's the right thing.
Yeah, I'm just. Can you hear me better now? Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not in the best place to talk, but yeah, I can. Sorry. First off, thank you so much for this presentation, Denise and Caroline. Just outstanding. These are the content experts. You see how the advisory committee and our partners have really claimed this project as it's theirs, and so thank you for doing this. So well done. Yes, I'll say so. The Greenland's Blue Waters is based at the Minnesota Institute for Sustainable Ag at the University of Minnesota. We work across boundaries, though, and partner across the Upper Midwest. So kind of the basis of the project is at the University of Minnesota. We do have other advisory committee members from the U. I can't remember everyone at this moment, but we can certainly get you that other information. In addition, on that Match Made in Heaven website, there is a list of the advisory members at this point.
I'm drawing a blank on the name, but the gal that used to be, she just left the Minnesota Beef Industry Council.
Oh,
She had been on the
Allison?
committee. Yes, Allison. Yeah, so she's been on. I don't know if I can't remember who
Correct.
from the university's on.
Right, and the Minnesota Cattlemen's continues to be represented. Yes.
And Anna
Oh.
Carlson is part of it also sometimes.
And Anna Cates. Well, I guess she's
Anna
more-
Cates.
Yeah,
sorry.
Anna Cates. Is that even?
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, Anna Cates with the Minnesota Soil Health Office.
One of the things I was going to add is, and kind of to enforce or and support what Caroline was saying. To me, it's not just the end product, but the discussion that has happened as a part of this project from the start to where we're at today has just been, I think, the premium part of this project. Because as Caroline said, as a beef specialist, she and I are not going to have much conversation in other formats. But through this project, we have had a lot of conversation, and bringing our cattlemen producers, our cattlemen officers to the table with the corn and bean growers. They interact with each other, they work with each other some, but nothing to the extent that we've had that conversation as a part of this project. So the process, I think, is as valuable as the end product is. The other thing that I would add, and we were discussing this a little bit before we started, is what are some of my hopes to come out of this? One of my hopes is that we get some good ideas from the survey to feed through our policymakers to help develop policy that will support both economic livestock production and environmental protection at the same time. Because I think in a lot of cases, the economic portion of agriculture and the environmental protection component of agriculture have not always been supportive of each other. A lot of times we've been pitted against each other. And I'd hope that some of this comes to policy that can really help to overcome some of those challenges. Now, from extension, I'm not involved in policy, but I know there's a lot of our partners who are, to help look at how do we have us all working at the same table instead of working against each other.
And I can't help but add one more observation about the timing of this all. As Erin well knows, the idea of doing yet another survey was just a big groaner for me. But well, I have said that out loud, and I feel that way until I got to this process, and the process of creating this survey and the whole project as a whole has been and continues to be stellar. But the timing of this work, the need has never ever gone away. It's no less today than it was 20 and 50 and 60 or 70 years ago. But the climate, lower C, is different, because you now find the concepts of soil health in so many what otherwise would have been conventional agriculture publications and in the proverbial coffee shops. And I'm not saying it's widely and universally adopted at all. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that the God, I hate to use the word climate because it's such a loaded word now, but the atmosphere for the kind of bridge building that we're talking about, that we're trying to nurture here, has more fertile ground now than it did even 5 or 10 years ago, because some of the understanding of soil health and its utility across the spectrum of farm production is enhanced now in a way that it wasn't. It used to be much more the domain of the more sustainable or conservation or organic farming communities. And it's not that it wasn't embraced by some conventional crop farmers, by no means, but it is just a more widely understood benefit and goal for farming now. And so I'm sort of irritatingly hopeful that maybe this is our moment when we can talk about resource management in a more altogether fashion, and the way this grant and project is unfolding, and the way we've tried to write our survey, and what the case studies that Denise is involved in our field days next year, I hope illustrates that the timing and the utility of talking about soil health for the betterment of everybody, and how do we do that, in this case, the reintroduction of livestock onto crop farms, has some purchase that it did not have in earlier years. And that could go for policy as well. That should go. We hope it goes for policy as well.
That's excellent, Caroline and Denise. You guys have both been both of your knowledge and everything else has been just stellar for this conversation. And really, I've been reading Caroline's work for many months now through our updates through UMRI, which I put a link in the chat box. And I encourage you to check that out, because it does go into a little bit of details about the project and how it all is coming together. So I just wanted to thank you both again. And does anybody have any other questions?
Christine,
Yes,
but I just jumped on late because I had to be at another town hall.
yes, Jill.
Hi,
But
Joe.
Hi, so I wanted to know how the event went. Did you see barriers breaking down? Did you see some good positive stuff from the Match Made in Heaven?
You mean,
process?
do you mean, Jill, from just the process of getting the survey written and the infographic designed?
Okay, I thought that you already
That's
had,
that's where we are right now is
okay,
we've spent the first year and a bit creating ourselves as an advisory group and designing an infographic as a kind of break the ice tool, and a tool that we're now using to do outreach around the survey, and then designing this survey. And I think I can answer that so far. The fact that we have 65 organizations represented on our calls, and more than half of them keep coming back to our Zoom working meetings, suggests to me that there is conversation and communication across the spectrum where there has not been before. It's not usual for crop farmer or cropping associations and livestock associations. It's not like they're enemies. It's just that this is an opportunity for them to be at the table together, even though it's a Zoom table, and there just are not those typical kind of opportunities. And that we have accomplished,
okay, good.
as an
I think
example.
there's a lot well, I'm learning a lot from the soil health stuff, especially the environmental functions. Those 4 that Gabe Brown talks about, the energy, the biology, the nutrient cycling, and the water cycle. So being involved with a watershed district, I'm starting to connect the dots. And the other thing is the heat that comes off of when you don't have good transpiration, when you don't have a carbon sponge for water to fall on, and it's runoff, that we're actually contributing to the global warming, to the warming of the atmosphere. So as a member of an urban area, I'm starting to realize how important this is for what we're doing to promote droughts in other parts of the country. And I really think it's time for those of us that are in urban areas to start figuring out how we are a part of this problem. And how we just need to plan more strategically. I think we can learn from all of your principles in terms of diversity of plants, and whether they, help with mycorrhizal fungi or whatever, but we're going to have to be more strategic, or we're going to keep creating dead zones and that. So I thank you so much for everything you're doing. I keep learning, and I appreciate it so much.
That's
Jill,
great.
you're
Jill.
great.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any more questions? I'd like to give a plug for our next month, Thinking Like a Watershed. We have our Howard County heroes, as we call them. They're 2 watershed health coordinators, Hunter Schlifka and Neil Schaefer. We had them on 2 years ago, and they're going to be coming back with updates. They have the Howard County is located in our northeast area of Iowa, for those of you who are not Iowa residents, but they are soil and conservation specialists, and they have had more land under conservation with cover crops, etc., than any other county in Iowa. And they have continued to just flourish. And so they're going to give us a report on their updates, and it's amazing. I have some of the numbers, but I'm not going to share them with you because you'll have to listen.
Come back next month.
Yeah. So we'll be sharing that link with you guys too. But they've been just stellar, and they've received a lot of Izaak Walton League awards and so forth. And it looks like our executive director, program director, David Zentner from Minnesota has his hand up and wants to say a few words. He missed out. He came in a little bit later, so.
Well, I was fascinated by the comments at the end of the program and so appreciative of them. And also embarrassed. I fell asleep after supper and missed my first Thinking Like a Watershed program. After all the work you did to put it together, I'm not that important as a participant, but I learned so much from these. And they're good. What I thought I heard was not to move the track over to the Upper Mississippi River Initiative. It's a small piece I'm proud of, but it's a small piece of a big drama. But I think those values you all shared are core values for UMRI, to get diverse people together. So an apology and a thank you, and I'll stop at that, Christine.
Z, we record these, so you'll get to see the rest of it, and it was very well done. Caroline and Denise put together a really nice presentation, so you'll get to see it.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
I guess that's it for this evening. Denise and Caroline, do you guys have anything else to say, or? Okay.
Nope, we're good.
I'm very grateful that everybody showed up, and I wish everybody a beautiful evening and week, and we'll keep you posted. I'll send out this link so you can share it with others. And also our next Thinking Like a Watershed, April 11th. So have a beautiful week and stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.